About last week where he has played a little bit better. What a pass by Rondo.
That might be the trigger.
Why not? Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league?
The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles. The LA Lakers, the 2010 NBA champions.
Let's piss some people off today, shall we? Yeah, let's rank the champions from the 2010s. So every team that won a championship, we're gonna go from worst to best. And there's gonna be chaos because in any ranking, there are people who agree, disagree, they would have their list totally different, so I invite all the chaos. But not quite as much chaos as you can see live next year in the NBA with the SeatGeek app. The SeatGeek app pulls tickets from all over the web, so buying is really easy, and it also assures you'll be getting the best value for your ticket. While doing your search, each ticket is ranked with a score from 1 to 100 that lets you know if you're getting a good deal or not for your purchase. And on top of that, it gives you a detailed view of what you would actually see from your seat if you were actually there. If you're interested in this app, the link to download will be in both the comment section and the description. Consider using my promo code DOM2K to get 20% off your first purchase. Alright, so check it out. The way I think this is going to go is I am ranking these championship teams off of a few things. Well, actually just a couple, because I'm not really taking into account the regular season. There's a lot of factors there that just don't matter. We're going to be ranking off of their actual playoff run and then how they did in the finals as well. I think that's pretty much the only criteria we need. Make this short, sweet, and simple to the point. At number 10, I don't think there's much disagreement here. I'm going to go with the 2015 Warriors. The 2015 Warriors really just left a lot to be desired, and that's why they faced so much criticism over the summer after defeating what was left of the Cavaliers in a 6-game series. And it was mainly because they were such a great regular season team with a tally of 67 wins, I believe. But aside from the NBA Finals, they also come under fire for their actual playoff run. The common thing is to talk about everybody that was missing, from Drew Holiday in the first round to Mike Conley dealing with injuries in the second round. Now, I'm of the belief that, hey, you play who's in front of you. However, watching them in the 2015 finals was painful. There was no Kyrie Irving past overtime of game 1, and they were actually down 2-1 in this series at a point. For a little bit of time, just a little bit of time in game 4 in Cleveland, it actually looked like they might go down 3-1. However, they were ultimately able to get it together and find a lineup that worked and allowed them to beat the Cavaliers in 6 games. But that win left so much to be desired that there was even a crowd that believed the finals MVP shouldn't come from the winning team, and before 2015, not gonna lie, I really hadn't heard that much. I really can't remember an argument where people were seriously arguing that a guy on the losing team deserved the finals MVP. Steph Curry did play better than a lot of people give him credit for in that series, but he too left a lot to be desired. A highlight of that series is Matthew Dellavedova going toe-to-toe with him, which just makes the rumblings louder that, hey, what would they have done against Kyrie Irving that year? So yeah, you have to just play who's ever in front of you, but overall, not a satisfying championship. They didn't look satisfied during their initial celebration, and I do think that you could probably make an argument that every other team on this list could either give this team a run for their money or even beat them. So next up at number 9, I am going to go with the newly minted champions, the 2019 Toronto Raptors. Obviously, this would be freshest in all of our minds, and I still feel the same way about this run that I felt about it during the actual run itself. First of all, their run through the East was impeccable. This was the strongest Eastern Conference that we've had in many years. It's probably going to be the strongest that we have for many years because it looks like it has taken a step back during this year's free agency, but nevertheless, it was very impressive. They were taken to 7 by the Philadelphia 76ers and just escaped by a bounce. Then they went and they kind of looked like they were in control for a lot of the Milwaukee series. Even one of the games that they lost at the beginning, they were in control of that. However, I would say that I was more impressed by this team's Eastern Conference run than I was the actual championship itself. Now, I have been on record saying I don't think you should measure yourself. If you're a team, you don't measure yourself by your ability to have beaten the Kevin Durant and Steph Curry Warriors. You just don't. That team was a lot more powerful than any other team could naturally make themselves. They were an all-star team, so if you couldn't compete with them, then whatever. Most people couldn't. I fully believe that if the 2019 Raptors had a run into a healthy Warriors, they probably would have been gentlemen swept. But even with all the injuries that the Warriors dealt with, they nearly pushed this to a 7th game. They were one shot away from a 7th game. This was with Kevon Looney's rib injury, with Klay Thompson missing a game, with him tearing his ACL and having to miss the end of game 6. There was a lot of stars that aligned correctly for Toronto in this run. However, it's not just that, it's also what I was seeing on the court. This is the only other champion on the list that you can consider a one superstar team. So if you look at all the other champions, everybody else either had like a really good team or they had at least 2 superstars. Throughout some of the run, it felt like they were kind of watching Kawhi Leonard. Throughout the finals, sometimes it felt like Kawhi Leonard was really silent. So they definitely earned this title. Getting out of the East was a dogfight, but I think a lot of people would agree it really could have been anybody out of the East this year, out of the top like 3 teams we were looking at. Could have easily been the Sixers, could have very easily have been the Bucks. Remember, this is nothing taken away from any of these teams, it's just when you're putting them up against other guys on this list, and when I put the 2019 Raptors against everybody, I can really only put them above the 2015 Warriors. At number 8, oh yeah, y'all gonna be mad at me for this one, 2016 Cavaliers, I am gonna do it. I don't care if it's unpopular, this is where the 2016 Cavs go for me, and if you have a different opinion, just argue it, but I'm gonna argue it from this perspective. First of all, the Eastern Conference run was not at all impressive. They played the Detroit Pistons, they played the Atlanta Hawks, then they played the Toronto Raptors, and no, this is the one before Kawhi Leonard, this is LeBronto. Anyways, you've probably forgotten by now, but all 4 games in the Pistons series were close, and they definitely shouldn't have been. The Cavaliers really outweighed them with talent. They were taken 2-6 by those Raptors. That was like the weirdest 6-game series ever because they killed the first 2 games, then they went back to Cleveland tied. No clue how that happened. Then it's like they just got serious and decided the series was over, beat them in 6 games. But then the NBA Finals, that's where most of this ranking comes from. You know, when they got to play the Golden State Warriors, they looked like a team that was in the NBA Finals by virtue of playing in the Eastern Conference where nobody was supposed to be able to compete with them. When the Pistons were hanging close with them in every one of those games in the first round, the thought was, how the hell is this team going to play with the 73-9 Warriors in the finals? And when we got to the finals, that is exactly what it looked like. The Warriors mollywopped them the first 2 games. They wound up 3-1 in that series. The Warriors went up 3-1, we already know. And my opinion on this series has never changed in the last 3 years. I still today think that if the Warriors go back to Game 5 and nobody's suspended, nobody is hurt, that's referring to Draymond Green and Andrew Bogut, this series is a gentleman's sweep. I just don't see how it would have gone any other way. Now, with that being said, the Cavaliers did exactly what they were supposed to do, and this is still an amazing comeback either way because they were down 3-1, they were down 3-1 to what was still a very good team even without Draymond Green for 1 game and then without Bogut. But they also had to go back to Golden State and win a Game 7. And they fought tooth and nail for that. To me, that is still the greatest game of this decade. However, I'm never going to forget details. It is not going to be a thing where we're sitting here 10 years from now and we just say they beat the 73-9 Warriors. There's context to every series, just like the last 2 I talked about. There's always context, and that 3-1 comeback, there's no way that happens if both teams are just mano-a-mano, man-to-man, everyone healthy. There's no way. Now, if they had just beaten the 73-9 Warriors, like just straight up, I think they go a lot higher on this list. But again, this is not taking away from their championship. This is ranking them against the other teams. Now, if you watched where I actually ranked all of these titles in terms of importance, the 2016 Cavaliers are all the way up there. That did a lot for LeBron's legacy. That title is more meaningful than any of the ones that the Warriors won, all that good stuff. But ranking them as a championship team, ranking them as a team in this decade, they go 8th for me. At number 7, we take it back to the top of the decade. I am going to go with the 2010 Lakers. These Lakers repeated just by the skin of their teeth. Their run through the Western Conference, it was okay. They played the Thunder when they were extremely young. This is the 2010 Thunder, which I believe was their first playoff appearance. And the Thunder that year were just 1 shot away from actually going to 7 with the defending champion Lakers. So that's when you knew KD and Westbrook. You knew they were going to be something for a while. Obviously, we didn't know what, but back then it looked very special. They played the Jazz next, who were very deceptive because they always had like the Deron Williams and Carlos Boozer duo, but you always knew that they weren't very serious about going far. That's just how it felt back then. And then they played the Phoenix Suns, and this is the Suns that were not quite as good as the ones from like 06, the one in 07, the ones that almost went to the finals. This is Nash and Sotomayor. This was pretty much the end of them. This was their last year together. That went to 6. It would have been a huge upset if the Suns would have beaten them. However, beating the Celtics in the finals, that was huge. That was monumental, of course, because the Celtics and Lakers rivalry, but also because by that point, the Celtics had proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that their 4th seed ranking, it meant absolutely nothing. They were an excellent defensive team. Of course, they had no shortage of offense, with the big 3 being ran by Rondo, who was really coming into his own at that point. They had excellent depth. You had Tony Allen, Rasheed Wallace, Glenn Davis, Nate Robinson, and that series was a dogfight all the way down to the last second. Get to Game 7, it is an extremely defensive affair, and the Lakers prevailed. Of course, there is the slight note that Kendrick Perkins does tear his ACL in Game 6. That's a game that the Lakers dominated. Many believe that if Perkins had played in Game 7, we would have had a different outcome, but again, who knows, because the problem in that game really became scoring. So the Lakers had a decent run through the West that year, but they beat an amazing Celtics team with only one injury. No suspensions, nothing else crazy influencing that series. It was just straight up hand to hand, and it was on the backside of a repeat as well, so. At number 6, give me the 2011 Mavericks. I've already done a video saying that I believe the Mavericks had the greatest playoff run of all time. That can be disputed with one of the Houston Rocket runs, but we already know the story here. They go through the Thunder, they go through the defending champion, the defending repeat champion Lakers, and then the newly minted Big Three in Miami, who everybody by that point thought was going to win the championship. What made the Mavericks run sweeter was that nobody expected it. If you weren't in Dallas, you were not talking about the Mavericks going to the finals. You were talking about the Lakers, the Heat, the Celtics. You were talking about them. The Mavericks, they came out of nowhere that year. As mentioned earlier, only one superstar in Dirk Nowitzki going up against, 3 superstars in the Miami Heat. You had Dwayne Wade, who at the time was going to probably win Finals MVP if the Heat would have won that series. Prime LeBron James, prime Chris Bosh. The way that the Mavericks were able to get them was with defense and the fact that the Heat were not a deep team. That really hurt because the Mavericks, on the other hand, were a deep team. Pretty much similar to the Raptors, where it was one star, yes, but they had a lot coming after that. They had Tyson Chandler, Jason Terry, Jason Kidd, who played an integral part in defending LeBron James, as crazy as that sounds, Deshaun Stevenson, Shawn Marion. And the craziest thing about this is they didn't even have Caron Butler. It's like nobody even knows Caron Butler was a part of this team. That's added offense that they did not have going into that series. That's another reason people did not think they were going to make it like that. He got injured very early on in the year. They had traded for him previously, and he was supposed to be a big part of what they could do. So the fact that they made that run without him made it that much sweeter. I think the 2011 Mavericks, in terms of importance, they might have the most important ring this decade. You could debate that with the 2016 Cavaliers, but I do think overall there are actual better championship teams. Just like how the Raptors, when you have one superstar, there's naturally going to be better championship teams than that. There are some teams that had multiple superstars and they also had good depth to go with it. Case in point, my number 5 pick, which is the 2012 Heat. I think the 2012 Heat probably would have beaten the 2011 Mavericks. I think if they had came back with the same rosters, I give that one to the Heat because by this point LeBron James had done a lot to expand his game. His post game was a lot better, jump shot better, he was way more aggressive, and it was actually his team by this point. He was not sharing it with Dwayne Wade. That being said, this was Dwayne Wade, I think, right before you could really see his decline. Also, basically the only significant addition to this team was Shane Battier. But he changed a hell of a lot. He gave them another option to spread the floor, gave them more defense. So that addition combined with LeBron James being a lot more aggressive, this was definitely a better team than 2011. And getting out of the East, I would say this is one of the only times you would call this team getting out of the East impressive. Yeah, in 2012, Chris Bosh got hurt during the Pacers series, so they had to finish off the Pacers series without him, and their depth took a hit. Without Bosh, that was a very important part to that team. So then they had to go beat the Boston Celtics, who were also pretty hindered themselves, but when they found themselves down 2-3 and then they had to go into Boston and LeBron James had to have one of his best games ever, yeah, that's one of the most memorable moments in this decade by far. They handled a very good Thunder team. I really dislike when people say that the Thunder were young and inexperienced as a way to discredit the 2012 Heat, because in reality, they gave the Heat a run for their money and people just don't remember it. They don't remember it because this was a 5-game series, however, pretty much every game except the last one was close. The Thunder were in every one of those games and it could have easily have been a different series. So the 2012 Heat will be bested by their counterparts, the 2013 Heat at number 4. 2013 Miami was amazing. This was when they had it all figured out. They had the pressure off of them of winning an NBA championship by this point. They went out and added Ray Allen to this team, which again, more depth, more shooting, and this is around LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. It was definitely needed probably at this point because Dwayne Wade, this is when he really did start to show his decline. He would have flashes, and he did in the NBA Finals. Still definitely a very important part, don't get it twisted. They could not have won the championship without him, but this was not Dwayne Wade from 2012 and definitely not from 2011. But there is no debate, this was the best Miami Heat team. They won 27 straight games during the regular season. This was the best version of LeBron James we ever saw, ever. This is peak athleticism, his best shooting year from the 3-point line, could have won Defensive Player of the Year. There is so much that can be said about that season. It really, the way he was playing basketball, it looked unfair. Their run through the East, however, you know, meh. Milwaukee Bucks, Chicago Bulls without Derrick Rose. The only entertaining thing in the East was them actually going to 7 with the Indiana Pacers, led by Paul George. Now, that was an unexpected series if we've ever seen one. The Pacers, we knew they were good, but not take the best version of the Big Three Miami Heat to 7 good. But the really impressive thing was beating the 2013 Spurs. It's also because this is a series that it felt like they were not supposed to win. By the 6th game, the Spurs had done everything they were supposed to do. We have recapped this moment 1,000 times, don't even need to go over what happened there. But the fact that they had enough composure to not just come back in game 6, but then go out and win game 7 as well, they definitely earned their 4th spot here. And the only reason they're not higher is because it's just impossible to put them above these other teams. For example, at number 3, 2014 Spurs. The 2014 Spurs, if we're actually talking about regular teams, could have easily been number 1, but you will see what I mean there in a moment. 2014 Spurs are flat out one of the best teams I've ever seen. And get this, they weren't a super team. This wasn't some conglomerate of stars that were put together through the offseason. This wasn't just a superstar gang up. No, this was just great team basketball, great fundamentals, great passing, great defense, unselfishness. This team came back and ran circles around the Miami Heat in 2014. And the most impressive thing was, yes, Dwayne Wade had declined a little bit, but coming into the 2014 series, there wasn't this feeling of, oh, the Heat are outmatched or they can't win this series. No, not at all. We didn't know who was going to win that series, but the Spurs came out. Tim Duncan, before the series had even started, said, "We'll do it this time." You know what kind of confidence that takes to go against a team like the Miami Heat and say we're going to beat them before it even starts? Other superstars probably would have caught flack for that, but nah, he wasn't kidding. They went and they backed up their talk. The ball was flying around the court at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Their defense and mainly Kawhi Leonard kept LeBron James ineffective until garbage time, really. LeBron's stats say he did amazing in the 2014 finals, but if you actually go back and look at what happened, a lot of those points came when the game was out of reach. A lot of those stats came when the game was out of reach. That series got out of hand very, very quickly, and it's just a shame that the 2014 Spurs cannot be first in this decade because there's no way that they would be over either Warriors team. The Warriors, to put it in the words of SpongeBob, Plankton cheated. They went and took a team from 2016 that was really supposed to win that championship, and they went and just got rid of a lot of pieces that they, it didn't really matter if you were going to get Kevin Durant. Then they stuck Kevin Durant on it. What was anybody supposed to do about that? That was the most boring part of this decade, and the 2018 finals were probably the worst of this decade as well, but the 2018 Warriors do get the 2nd spot here. What do I need to explain here? A team with Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green before he forgot how to shoot, and KD. Also with the fact that they still had their core, the most important core parts of their bench in Sean Livingston and Iguodala. Their playoff run through the West, they didn't really play anybody until the conference finals. They played the Spurs without Kawhi Leonard. They played the Pelicans, and then they played the Houston Rockets where they lost Iguodala, and then they almost lost the series. Yet again, they get lucky and Chris Paul goes out, which pretty much allows them to come back and win the series because Houston is not able to hold on to either of the leads that they grow. However, we all know that if you have a 20-point lead against the Golden State Warriors, or those Golden State Warriors that had Kevin Durant, you knew it was never safe, and it wasn't. They win that series, and right there you could have handed them the trophy. They play the Cavaliers. J.R. Smith has the most memeable moment in the 2010s, I'm convinced. And game over is a sweep. There is not another team on this list that is better than the 2018 Warriors. I know people will probably try to debate that the 2014 Warriors are better. I'm of the opinion that you have this all-star starting 4. You have the most firepower that we've ever seen in league history. I don't think there is another team behind here that I've named before that is better than the 2018 Warriors. As a matter of fact, the only team that I'm going to say is even better than them would be the 2017 Warriors. 2017 Warriors just absolutely ate the league, so they really didn't have much competition in the West that year. They had the Blazers, the Jazz, then, yeah, again, the Spurs without Kawhi Leonard because Kawhi got injured in the first game of their series. A lot of people say Kawhi would have led the Spurs to have beaten them that year. I disagree. I don't know how you go from, I just don't see how you take 2 quarters of domination from the Spurs and then stretch that over a whole series. I don't see it. Not against this Warriors team anyways. You got to remember, this team was hot more often than they were not. And then check it out. They came head to head with the 2017 Cavaliers, who were also one of the best teams we had seen that decade. People forget. But the 2017 Cavaliers, I'm convinced, were better than the 2016 Cavaliers. They had more depth, they had crazy offense. Their defense had gotten better by the time the playoffs rolled around. Or by the time the finals had rolled around anyways. The Golden State Warriors, gentlemen, swept that team. That team that had also only lost one game until the finals. They looked like they were in another tier from a team that had only lost one game coming into the finals. Just let that sink in. For the people that would say the 2017 Warriors weren't all that for some reason because you thought they would have lost to the Spurs, I would just say you can't have it both ways. You can't say that this team ruined the NBA and they were overpowered, but also that they were just going to lose to this Spurs team, who, by the way, could not compete once one player went out. That's the telltale sign to me. One player went out and they couldn't even compete anymore. I don't think that team was going to win 4 games against the 2017 Warriors, I don't. That being said, I do find this team very artificial with the addition of Kevin Durant, and I would have loved to have given the first spot to the 2014 Spurs, but I'm just here to report what I saw go down, and this is the way that I saw it. This is my list. If you have a different list, which I am 100% sure you probably do, leave it in the comment section. Hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications for future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.